Societal perceptions of an ideal human being have greatly varied over time. Today, our concept of perfection and beauty is greatly different compared to the views of those in prehistoric or the Dark Ages. While one may think that the shift has to do with the change of the human mind over time, it is more that we define traits that show perfection and power based on the current values within society. With regards to ancient Greek and Roman male form, the evolution societal portrayal of ideal male form depended on the values and power structure.
In ancient Greece, the youthful, idealized, and free-flowing form of Doryphorus by Polykleitos is a direct byproduct of the increased importance of humanism in mathematics. Doryphorus, made from circa 450 to 440 BCE, depicts a spear bearer where the spear is no longer there, that represents an ideal human being by the aesthetic standards of Polykleitos. The figure appears heroic, removed from the world, and not challenged by the task at hand, emanating a sense of power and youthfulness.
The Greeks associated strength with aloofness. It was considered barbaric and imperfect to emote. Furthermore, Greek mythology placed a special importance on its heroes, with heroes like Hercules, Achilles,
Odysseus, Perseus, Theseus, a lot of yusses.
The Greeks used many warriors and gods as the content of their works. Depicting gods as humans inspired the Greeks to stretch the boundaries of human potential, solve human problems, all in an attempt to live virtuously. Idolizing these gods and their heroic physical achievements would come to define the ideal human figure as muscular and aloof, a serene, silent confidence that could be undefeated.
This feeling was precisely the goal of Polykleitos, evidenced by his canon in which he wrote about the mathematical proportions and metrics necessary to create a perfect human being. Furthermore, while the Roman copy is made from marble, the original Doryphorus was constructed from bronze. When the bronze was new, it reflected a gleam that resembled glistening, suntanned skin, contributing to the idealized realism of the statue.
The lost wax bronze process was a technique used to create these bronze sculptures, and it heavily contributed to the realism of these sculptures. Artists could make detailed molds out of wax that they would then cast in clay. This allowed the artists to preserve details that they put in their original mold. Unlike marble, where you could accidentally chip a piece of the material and ruin the entire sculpture, bronze could be remelted and recast if there was an imperfection. Afterwards, the artist could then add more details with paint, chisel, and inlays from other metals.
With this ideal form, statues like Doryphorus were often placed in Greek palestras or gyms, and functioned to show and inspire citizens about what a perfect human being looked like. Another feature to be noticed is that Doryphorus seems ready to move. This sense of movement is due to the fact that the figure stands in contrapposto, evidenced by the observation that he has most of his weight on the right leg, while his left arm bears the weight of the spear. In contrast, the sculpture's left leg and right arm are relatively relaxed, reflecting how humans would stand when bearing weight in this manner. The ideas of contrapposto and the canon were important because they directly reflect the evolution of classical Greek art from the Archaic period, due to the increasing importance of science and democracy. After Solon laid the foundations for Greek democracy in the 5th century BCE, Athenian democracy caused many to be more focused on humanism, an emphasis on the power that individuals and humans had, not just gods. This evolution from the Archaic period, a time when elites dominated the hierarchy, can be seen through the transition from archaic to classical art. The use of contrapposto created a more natural and free-flowing sculpture, directly contrasting the rigid, taut, and formal koroi and korai from the Archaic period. These were mostly commissioned by aristocrats or well-to-do commoners who desired elite status. The rigid form of many of these koroi and korai mirror the rigid social hierarchy that these aristocrats dominated. In direct contrast, the natural and free form of Doryphorus through contrapposto reflects the greater freedom of individuals after Athenian democracy. Additionally, the mere fact that these techniques like contrapposto and the canon emerged showed the greater importance that Greek society started to place on understanding the individual. As individuals were the center of democracy, people scrutinized individual behavior in a more pronounced manner than ever before. All of these techniques were an attempt to perfect the human being, reflecting a transition to greater emphasis on humanism from the Archaic period. The increased importance of science also helped Greece evolve from the Archaic period to the classical Doryphorus sculpture. While Doryphorus looks complex and technical compared to the previous Archaic period, it was not the skill that suddenly increased, but rather they placed more emphasis on studying human anatomy to perfection. Additionally, though the canon is lost now, we can learn from comments from other ancient Greek philosophers like Plutarch, who commented that the numbers must all come to a congruence through some system of commensurability and harmony, for ugliness is immediately ready to come into being if only one chance element is omitted or inserted out of place. Moralia 45c. This quote shows the impact of the ancient Greek obsession with mathematics on Doryphorus. The combination of science and humanistic ideals created by the advent of Athenian democracy led to the evolution of classical art from the archaic period, evidenced by the use of mathematical methods to create a perfect ideal being.
In contrast to the youthful and idealistic Greek canon, the head of a Roman patrician is a portrait bust made of marble in around 75 to 50 BCE in Republican Rome that emphasizes age and experience as admirable characteristics. This work emphasized the concepts of gravitas and veristic qualities. Gravitas, meaning serious, and veristic, meaning realistic, are central qualities in this portraiture that displays a wealthy aristocrat who bears the burden of making decisions and holds the power in the Roman Senate. Compared to the youthful and muscular qualities of Doryphorus, the head of a Roman patrician is not as idealized. It depicts a man with a large nose, bald head, and deep wrinkles. Portrait busts like the head of a Roman patrician were often commissioned by wealthy aristocrats to celebrate their lineage and power in society, and having a private bust was evidence of a high status. Power is conveyed through this work as the patrician displays qualities such as the deep wrinkles and balding that emphasize the idea that he has wisdom and has had many years of experience serving Rome, a life well lived. This shift from portraying idealized qualities like those seen in Doryphorus to seriousness and realistic aging features on the head of a Roman patrician has much to do with the evolution of societal values. This change in content reflects the evolution of Greek ideas of power to the Roman ideas of power. The advent of Athenian democracy and science led to a Greek obsession with humanism and an attempt to portray humans in the most ideal way possible. However, the Senate structure encountered in Rome consolidated power and influence to wealthy and aged aristocrats, which led many Romans to focus on the pursuit of power. Athenian democracy required everyone to participate in the government, while the Roman Republic elected magistrates and patricians to govern over a large group of people. The weight of this responsibility led many patricians to be and look aged and experienced, and as a result, these characteristics became symbols of power, and these busts reinforced these qualities as ones that others should honor and strive for. The form of the head of a Roman patrician is also very important. These patricians were honored in the form of busts rather than full-bodied statues. These busts only depicted the upper part of their body, including their head, neck, and part of their chest and shoulders. Private portrait busts were originally used for funerary purposes, memorializing and immortalizing the recently deceased. Creating these figures was a means of ancestral worship that is central to the Romans' belief about death and the afterlife. In Roman tradition, the state set apart certain days to remember loved ones, such as the parentalia. Portraiture was said to help spirits remember details about their life rather than continuing to float in the underworld without memory of their existence. However, these funerary busts were typically reserved for the heads of households and the upper class. These busts would then be proudly displayed in the atrium of a family home. The presence of a bust commanded respect as it indicated a family's great wealth or power. The bust's emphasis on lineage then manifested itself in the creation of celebratory busts to honor the service and accomplishments of political officials and military leaders. Families were especially inclined to create busts of their powerful and successful ancestors as their service ennobled the rest of the household. These busts celebrate and honor public service and also reflect the potential for power and success that the descendants of notable men had. The Roman Republican ideals that place significance on familial legacy, the merit system, the pursuit of power and prestige are seen through the changing use of busts.
Following the era of wealthy aristocratic rule in Republican Rome, the portrayal of the ideal male form once again drew stylistic inspiration from the classical Greeks. However, instead of using ideal form to emphasize humanism, this was used to show the power of a ruler. This intricate fusion of styles is clearly seen in one of the most famous statues of the early Roman Empire, Augustus of Prima Porta. The statue held a great deal of importance and value in society, as it not only showed off the ideal male physique, but also communicated Augustus's power as a military victor and his ideology through his steadfast support of Roman religion. Made of marble in the early 1st century, Augustus of Prima Porta depicted an ideal youth who was strong, healthy, and well-kept. The Romans used marble opposed to bronze because marble was a material that was much more readily available in the hills and mines in Italy. Similar to the classical Greek Doryphorus, Augustus is standing in a relaxed contrapposto pose, with his knees slightly bent and his weight primarily resting on his dominant leg. His arm is stretched out, giving off a sense of authority through his commanding presence. Despite his portrayal as a youthful and flawless individual, Augustus was actually middle-aged at the time the sculpture was commissioned. It was important that he portrayed himself in this manner to the masses because the majority of the people in Rome had never actually seen him in the flesh. Therefore, their only physical impression of him was based on the art that depicted him. This portrayal is important because it reflects an evolution from the head of a Roman patrician, in that Augustus now used youth and idealism to show his power. Whereas age and experience were deliberately shown in Republic Rome, Augustus wanted to show the Greek perfectionist qualities. This evolution has much to do with the fact that Augustus was now the ruler of Rome and the Senate no longer held as much power as before. In the deeds of the divine Augustus, Augustus rambled on about his accomplishments and military victories he brought to Rome. To support his narcissism, Augustus stated that youthful and ideal statues of him were erected in about 80 cities, showing how Augustus used these statues as a form of propaganda. To show his power to the citizens, he made sure to portray himself as muscular and youthful to ensure that the people respected his power. As a result of Julius Caesar's assassination and the anti-civil war, many Roman temples had begun wasting away and the citizens lost faith in the traditional religion and its gods. Julius Caesar's adopted son Octavian, later known as Augustus, would return temples and religion in an effort to renew the moral and confidence that were lost in Roman people due to the previous years of instability. He established the imperial cult, and Romans began worshipping the emperor as a god. Emperors, especially those who were deceased, were treated as deities. The Augustus Suprema Porta reinforced this respect for Roman religion, as a statue referenced a plethora of religious iconography, such as this figure of Cupid riding a small dolphin beside his right leg. The dolphin was a symbol of military might, symbolizing his naval victory over Mark Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, which made him the sole ruler of the Roman Empire. The baby Cupid is shown sitting here because Augustus and his family traced their lineage all the way back to Venus, the goddess of love, sex, and beauty, and Cupid is her son. It reinforced the idea that Augustus came from the goddess and his family was aligned with her. This emphasis on triumphance in battle and alignment with powerful deities was extremely important to Augustus in Rome, as he used this to reinforce the propaganda that this statue conveyed. While Doryphorus is fully nude, the most notable difference one could point out upon looking at both statues is that Augustus Suprema Porta is clothed in elaborate armor. As a focal point in the city, Augustus' statue drew the immediate focus away from solely the male body and instead drew more attention to the implied diplomatic victories and commanding presence. His goal was not only to look immaculate to the people who laid their eyes upon the statue, but more importantly to display its overwhelming power, intelligence, and diplomatic might. This was especially significant to the historical context of the transition from the Roman Republic to the Imperial Empire.
Although the Prima Porta and Doryphorus were both idealized versions of the human form, this idealized style was utilized for different reasons. Greek artists showed their human appreciation through the idealized style, while Roman artists used the same style to inflate the power and importance of a single leader, Augustus. It is important to distinguish that the Greeks used the idealized style to uplift the individual, while Romans used the idealized style to uplift a singular individual.
As time went on in ancient Greek and Roman history, art pertaining to the male form constantly drew inspiration from its forerunners and evolved into masterpieces that fit their distinct cultures and societies. While numerous connections and similarities can be drawn between the statue of Augustus and that of Doryphorus and the head of the Roman patrician, they all have key differences in content that reflect the ideals of their time. While the Greeks tried to depict a youthful and perfect human being, this was because of their emphasis on democracy and humanism. In Republic and Imperial Rome, sculptures and busts were instead used mainly to show the power of the ruling class. With the Senate as the main ruling body in Republic Rome, the age and experience of patricians were depicted as a sign of power. With Augustus as the ruler of Imperial Rome, youthfulness and military vitality was instead used to show power. Thus, we can see how the outcome of governmental systems played an impactful role in the portrayal of powerful men.